This is going to be a quick overview of the judicial branch of our government, which is the last branch of government we're looking at. The judicial branch was created by Article 3 of the Constitution, and essentially it establishes a Supreme Court. Congress is responsible for creating all the other courts of our federal court system. Now, the Articles of Confederation never had a judicial branch. They never had a court system. So this is the first time we ever had a united justice system within our country. We needed this judicial branch or this system of justice so we can interpret the laws of the land so that everybody across the country could be subject to the same law. Now, as a citizen of the United States, you are subject to the federal laws and the state laws of whatever state you live in. Most of the crimes that are committed in our country are going against a state law, not a federal law. So in our federal justice system or our federal court system, which is the court system which interprets the laws of the entire country, the cases that they're going to look over are constitutional issues, all federal laws, disputes between states, disputes between citizens from different states, disputes about treaties with the United States and other countries, and if somebody sues the federal government. So these are issues in which states cannot deal with. That's why the federal court system deals with these issues. Now, the main theme that I want you to know is that the state courts handle most of the crimes that are committed. Most cases are handled by state courts and never reach the federal court system. There are three levels to our federal court system. There's a federal district court, a federal court of appeals, and the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in our country. To figure out which court a case goes to, you're going to have to hear or determine the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is essentially who has the right to hear a case. Now, each of those courts, meaning the Federal District Court, the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court, are going to have one of these two types of jurisdictions. They're going to either have original jurisdiction or appellate jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction means that that court has the first right to hear a case. Appellate jurisdiction means that a court can review a case after it's been decided by a lower court. So, certain courts within our federal court system have either original or appellate jurisdiction. Our district courts are going to always have original jurisdiction. That's the first court in which a case goes to once it's in the federal court system. The Court of Appeals or the appellate court, they have appellate jurisdiction because cases can only get to that court after they've been decided at the district court level. With the federal district courts, there are 91 federal district courts in our country. They rule on both civil and criminal cases, and basically they hear the facts and evidence to judge on the specific issues. Sometimes these cases can have a judge decide the case, or other times they'll have juries. Examples of federal court cases are going to be bank robbery, counterfeiting, mail fraud, kidnapping, and civil rights abuses. After a case is decided in a district court, a person that loses that case can appeal that case, which means they can have that case be heard again. So the side that loses a case in a district court may appeal to the Federal Court of Appeal. Sometimes it will go to the Court of Appeals, but in other rare cases, it will go straight to the Supreme Court, depending on why the case is being appealed. In the Court of Appeal, there are 13 different courts around the country. These courts hear cases of appeal from the Federal District Court and sometimes from the Supreme Courts within a state. That's right, states have Supreme Courts as well. Every state has one. So, those are the two instances in which a case can reach the Court of Appeals. To reach the Court of Appeals, someone has to claim that a constitutional right has been violated. Basically, they're not looking for guilt or innocence at this point in time in a Court of Appeal case. They're just trying to see if the law was applied correctly to your case. So it's based on law and not on fact of guilt or innocence. In the Court of Appeals, there are no juries, only a judge rules. You have a panel of 3 judges. 2 out of the 3 judges have to agree on the decision. And there are no juries, only judges. Most times, a case is going to end there. So in the Court of Appeals, they're going to review a case for errors of law. Evidence really doesn't play that huge of a role because it's already been presented at district court, and they're only making sure that the law was followed. In the Court of Appeals, one of 3 things is going to happen. your case is going to be upheld, which means that the district court was correct in the original ruling. The Court of Appeal can reverse the district court ruling, meaning that the district court was wrong, or they can remand the case back down to district court, which means they'll send that case back down so it can be tried over. The last court within our federal court system is the U.S. Supreme Court. In the U.S. Supreme Court, that is the highest court of our land. It's the only court that we have for the federal justice system that can oversee or undo any previous case. In the Supreme Court, you're going to have 9 justices, and they're known as you're going to have 9 judges known as the Supreme Court justices. And they are the final appellate court that we have in our federal court system. So they hear all cases of appeals dealing with constitutional questions from all lower courts. And the only time that they're going to have a case directly go to them is in a case dealing with a diplomat or a representative from overseas, or with legal issues between states. Now remember, we already called that original jurisdiction. So the Supreme Court is the only court that has both original and appellate jurisdiction. Now, we're going to get into the Supreme Court later on in the week, but the final thing that we're going to look at is federal judges. All federal judges are appointed by the president for life terms. That is one of the powers that the president has. He can appoint people to the federal judicial branch. These people have these positions for life. They're not elected, so they're not put in power by the will of the people. This happens so we can get rid of all kind of corruption. If you're running for a position, you're going to need money. And they want to keep money out of the judicial branch because money can sometimes equal bribes, and that can get people out of trouble. So with that, that's why they have appointments of federal judges, and that's why they don't run. Now, most of the times when you get put in the position of a federal court judge, you are a friend of the president. You normally have the same political affiliation, and you believe the same thing that the president believes in. This is how these people get into positions of power within the judicial branch. Now that's it for today. Look over what you have written down, and this is all you need to know about federal judges.